Kael Ryn pressed himself into the jagged shadows of the asteroid cave, chest heaving, ears ringing with the chaos outside. Smoke curled through the cavern, thick and acrid, choking the scent of scorched metal and alien plasma. The screams of his family, neighbors, and friends echoed violently through the hollow corridors, a symphony of fear and death orchestrated by the Galactic Slavers. Kael's small hands gripped the hilt of a concealed knife, knuckles white. His 12-year-old mind raced faster than his heart, calculating every sound, every flicker of light, every shift in the shadows. One wrong move, and the Slavers' search drones, sleek, multi-legged machines bristling with energy emitters, would detect him. Detection meant death. "They're clearing the caves," a distorted voice crackled from above. Commander Varko's tone was calm, controlled, yet every syllable carried the weight of inevitable annihilation. "No human survives. Leave none behind." Kael's jaw tightened. He remembered the lessons his mother had whispered when the adults thought him too young to understand. Survive, Kael. Observe, adapt, and survive. He pressed himself closer to the cold stone wall and counted the drone patrols. 2 in the main chamber, 1 sweeping the tunnels. Timing was everything. A plasma whip lashed across the cave entrance, igniting a fire that raced along the jagged rock. Kael flinched, then froze, letting instinct guide him. A minor misstep, a trembling foot, a whisper of breath, could betray his position. Slowly, carefully, he began crawling along the edge of the tunnel, sticking to the darkness where the drone's sensors might miss him. One drone paused, scanning the air with eerie, unblinking optics. Kael flattened himself, hardly daring to breathe. His mind replayed every shadow, every corner he had memorized from previous games with his friends in the cave's labyrinth. He needed to move faster than the slavers anticipated, yet slower than the human eye would detect. "Young human, I know you're here," Varko said, voice echoing through a speaker. "Come out. Resistance is pointless." Kael's fingers tightened around the knife. Resistance isn't pointless, he thought. It's survival. He darted forward, low and silent, using a series of fallen boulders as cover. A stray spark from a nearby plasma emitter illuminated his path for a split second, but he pressed on, letting the shadows swallow him. He reached a side passage, a narrow fissure in the rock walls, barely wide enough for his slight frame. He slipped inside, moving into darkness deeper than night itself. The faint hum of the drones faded, replaced by his own rapid breathing and the distant crackle of destruction. Kael paused, listening. Footsteps approached from the main chamber. He could hear Varko's soldiers moving deliberately, confident in their superiority. They weren't expecting a human to outmaneuver them, to use intelligence instead of strength. Kael smiled faintly, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. They've forgotten the human's greatest advantage, ingenuity. Another scream tore through the cave, closer now, then silenced abruptly by a plasma blast. Kael flinched, then pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering. He knew the cave's exit led to the asteroid's surface, a narrow tunnel winding toward a shuttle that might take him to safety. But first, he had to pass the patrols, alive, undetected, and uninjured. A low growl vibrated through the rock. One of Varko's trackers had caught a hint of movement. Kael froze, thinking quickly. He remembered a trick his father had taught him years ago, distraction. He kicked a loose rock down the fissure, letting it tumble into a hollow chamber, producing a loud clang. The tracker paused, sensors swiveling toward the sound. Kael used the moment, darting across the tunnel, sliding past sharp rock edges, and dropping into another shadowed crevice. He felt a rush of exhilaration, fear mixed with clarity. Humans survived not because they were strong, but because they thought. Minutes stretched, or maybe seconds. Time seemed irrelevant. Every heartbeat, every breath, every silent calculation mattered. Kael reached a narrow shaft leading upward to the asteroid's surface. Above, the sky shimmered with the faint glimmer of stars, promising escape. He began the climb, careful not to scrape his hands against the jagged rock. A shadow fell across the entrance. One of Varco's soldiers had caught sight of movement. Kael paused, then in one swift motion kicked the loose gravel, causing the alien to stumble. Without hesitation, he vaulted upward, pulling himself onto the rocky surface above. The wind hit his face, cold and biting, carrying the scent of ozone from nearby energy blasts. Kael crouched behind a ridge, watching the chaos below. Smoke rose from the cave, twisting into the void, and somewhere in the distance, a shuttle waited, small but capable of carrying him away to safety. He whispered to himself, voice barely audible, yet resolute, "I survive. I'll survive. And they'll never forget it." Kael didn't pause for relief. The lesson of the cave had been brutal but clear. Humans adapt, humans endure, humans fight back in ways no alien could predict. Each step toward his shinobi master was a step toward mastery, training, and eventual vengeance. Below, the slavers regrouped, unaware that the child they thought powerless had already outwitted them. Above, the stars beckoned, silent witnesses to the cunning of humanity. Kael took a deep breath, then sprinted toward the hidden shuttle. Every muscle, every nerve, every thought focused on survival and the promise of learning from his shinobi master. The humans were weak, perhaps in strength, but never in will, never in mind. And Kael Ryn would prove it, one step, one escape, one lesson at a time. White heavy checkmark. Kael crouched low among the jagged rocks on the surface of the asteroid, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. The shuttle sat half-hidden in a depression, engines idling softly, its metal frame blending with the rough terrain. Behind him, the smoke and fire of the cave massacre rose like a dark monument to human loss. He had escaped the immediate threat, but the hunt was far from over. Varco's drones had already swept through the asteroid's surface, and Kael knew they were relentless. His mind, sharpened by instinct and fear, began calculating trajectories, distances, and blind spots. Every step had to be precise. Every choice had to favor survival. One misstep, one loud breath, one reflective rock surface, any of these could betray him. Even a child can be tracked. A voice crackled through the shuttle's internal comms. It wasn't Varcos himself, but a scout drone operator. Kael's fingers tightened on the control panel inside the shuttle. He had managed to override the locking mechanism remotely, granting him a small advantage. The operator's tone was calm, clinical, almost bored, but Kael could sense the undercurrent of irritation. The humans were never supposed to survive. Kael slipped out of the shuttle, using the uneven terrain to mask his silhouette. He moved fast, silent, sliding between rocks and craters, using each shadow as cover. A low hum alerted him to a patrolling drone above. Its optics scanned in a rhythmic pattern, sweeping the ground like a metronome. Kael ducked behind a jagged boulder, calculating. One movement too soon, and he would be exposed. Too late, and the drone would detect the slight heat of his body. He waited for the optics to pivot away. Then, with a silent leap, he landed behind the drone, pressing a small device against its casing. A spark, a hiss, and the machine went limp, its sensors dead. Kael exhaled slowly, but his relief was short-lived. From the ridge above, 2 more drones hovered, their energy emitters scanning. Kael sprinted toward a crater's edge, sliding down its slope, his small frame allowing him agility that the drones could not match. He landed in a shadowed crevice, crawling along the rough stone. The alien patrols above moved methodically, confident, unaware that the human they considered prey was not only surviving but also outthinking them. They assume strength is everything, Kael thought, eyes narrowing. They don't understand intelligence, adaptability, cunning. He paused briefly, listening to the faint echoes of distant patrols. A scout had detected a minor anomaly, his rock-kick distraction from earlier, but had deemed it insignificant. Kael allowed himself a faint, grim smile. Every alien underestimated humans. Every alien assumed survival relied on physical might alone. They had not accounted for a mind honed by necessity. The terrain grew steeper as he neared a cliff face overlooking a frozen canyon. The air was thin and biting, the low sun reflecting off the icy surfaces in blinding streak. Kael needed to descend into the canyon, where a narrow passage led toward the Shinobi Master's hidden sanctuary. But the descent was treacherous, requiring balance, precision, and nerves of steel. One slip could be fatal. He tested the edge, listening for vibrations. The patrols were still above, scanning, communicating in alien clicks and guttural tones. Kael's strategy was simple: avoid confrontation, exploit terrain, and strike only when necessary. He began his descent, one hand gripping ice-crusted rock, the other steadying himself on rough ledges. The slope was unstable, stones giving way under his weight. A rock tumbled, and for a heartbeat, he feared detection, but the drones were momentarily distracted by a sudden dust storm sweeping the canyon. Kael slid to a ledge, crouched, and pressed his back to the wall. From this vantage, he could see a patrol down below. Two of Varco's soldiers, armed with energy rifles, moved cautiously, scanning for movement. Kael noted the pattern of their footsteps, the timing of their pauses, the angles of their vision. He whispered under his breath, "Predictable." Using a small stone, he created a chain reaction. A rock fell, another slid, producing noise away from his position. The soldiers diverted, investigating the sound. Kael seized the moment, scaling the canyon wall with practiced stealth, each movement measured and deliberate. He reached another crevice, deeper and darker, offering concealment from both drones and patrols. As he moved, Kael reflected on what had brought him here. Loss, yes, but also opportunity. Humans were hunted across the galaxy, yet here he was, proving that instinct and intellect could match, and even surpass, the technology and brute force of the slavers. Every successful maneuver reinforced the truth he had begun to understand as a child. We adapt, we survive, we overcome. Suddenly, a low growl vibrated through the rock. Kael froze. From the shadows, a predator drone, larger and more sophisticated than any he had encountered, emerged. Its sensors scanned, claws extended, ready to strike. Kael's heart raced. This was not just a test of stealth. It was a test of creativity, speed, and courage. He assessed the situation. The drone relied on visual and thermal detection. The canyon walls were icy, reflective, and complex. Kael pulled a small mirror from his pack and angled it, reflecting sunlight into the drone's optic. The sudden glare confused it, sensors flickering. Kael moved quickly, dropping into a hidden fissure in the ice. The drone emitted a warning pulse but could not pinpoint him. Kael exhaled quietly, adrenaline surging. One more obstacle cleared. He climbed out of the fissure and continued his route, nearing the final approach to the Shinobi sanctuary. He knew that the master awaited, that his training would soon begin, but this journey had already forged him, made him sharper, faster, more aware. Above, distant patrols continued their methodical sweep, unaware of the human who had outmaneuvered them at every turn. Kael pressed forward, silent, determined, the shadows of the canyon embracing him like an old friend. Survival was no longer just instinct, it was strategy, cunning, and the subtle art of misdirection. Finally, after hours of careful navigation, Kael reached the forested edge of the sanctuary planet. Trees loomed high, dense foliage masking hidden pathways. The air smelled of earth, rain, and life, a stark contrast to the cold, metallic death of the asteroid caves. Kael's small smile returned. He had survived the hunt. A voice, calm but firm, whispered from the shadows. "You made it, Kael." Kael froze, then turned to see the silhouette of his shinobi master, eyes sharp and assessing. "Yes," Kael said, chest heaving, "and the humans, we survive. We adapt." The master nodded. "Good. But survival is only the beginning. What comes next is mastery." Kael's eyes gleamed. This was more than escape. It was a chance to transform grief and loss into strength. The journey through alien territory had proven the first lesson. Human cunning was not a myth, and underestimating it was a grave mistake. The canopy of the forested planet rustled above Kael as he stepped onto the hidden training ground, a natural arena carved into the mountain's slope. Shafts of sunlight pierced the dense foliage, illuminating patches of moss and rock, revealing the subtle traps and courses his shinobi master had set for him. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and earth, carrying the distant hum of alien drones still scouring the asteroid above, unaware of the human child who had survived their hunt. Kael's master, a tall, wiry figure clad in muted colors, stepped forward, eyes sharp and piercing. "You survived," the master said, voice calm but laced with intensity. "Few would have. But survival alone does not make a shinobi. You must learn to predict, to adapt, to turn weakness into advantage." Kael nodded, clutching the small knife at his side. "I learned already," he said, voice steady. "They thought strength mattered, but it was thinking, observation, and timing that kept me alive." The master studied him for a moment, then motioned toward a series of stone pillars, uneven and scattered across a clearing. "Then prove it. Your first test is agility. Move between these stones as if the patrols were hunting you. Silent, precise, untraceable. Show me you can turn survival into skill." Kael exhaled, eyes scanning the path. The stones were uneven, slick with moss. Misstep meant a fall or a sound that could alert an enemy. He began, shifting weight from foot to foot, sliding and leaping, barely disturbing the undergrowth. Each move was calculated, timing perfectly with the sway of branches and the natural rhythm of the forest floor. When he reached the final pillar, he landed lightly, crouching, barely making a sound. "Not bad," the master said, a hint of approval in the tone. "But agility alone is not enough. Humans have been underestimated across galaxies because they combine strength, intellect, and cunning. You must master them all." Kael's next lesson was endurance and observation. The master led him to a stream, where the water ran cold and fast, turbulent from the recent rainfall. Kael waded into the current, balancing on uneven stones, scanning the forest for simulated patrols. Small targets, stones painted with reflective alien markings, moved along the banks. Kael had to approach them, mark their position without triggering any alarms set by the master. Hours passed in concentrated effort. Kael stumbled once, caught himself before falling into the icy water, and corrected his approach. Each failure was a lesson, each success a reinforcement of human adaptability. By mid-afternoon, he had mastered the course, marking every target and predicting their movements before they became visible. "You are improving," the master said, voice sharp with satisfaction. "But now comes the most important lesson: anticipation. Every enemy has patterns, weaknesses, blind spots. A true shinobi, human or otherwise, turns observation into action." The master led him to a secluded glade, where shadows were long and deep. Several humanoid drones stood motionless among the trees, armed with energy weapons and sensors. "These are your final tests today," the master said. "One slip and they would detect you. Show me humans can outthink strength and technology alike." Kael's mind raced. The drones moved with precision, programmed to detect anomalies, but not to adapt unpredictably. Kael crouched, observing patterns, footsteps, sensor sweeps, rotations of the heads. He spotted gaps, moments where he could slip past unnoticed. He pressed forward, low to the ground, moving from shadow to shadow, using every boulder, every fallen log, every curve of the land as cover. A sudden spark, one drone sensor briefly flared, but Kael ducked behind a tree, letting it sweep past. He pressed onward, timing his movement to a gust of wind rustling leaves, masking the sound of his footfalls. Within minutes, he had navigated the glade, tagging every drone with a reflective marker. The master's eyes followed him, noting each precise motion, each calculated risk. "Impressive," the master said, voice calm but approving. "Few humans could have achieved this on their first day. Remember this: the universe will always underestimate you. They will assume brute force wins. But humans have something else. Ingenuity, adaptability, cunning. You have it. Never let them take it for granted. Kael straightened, chest rising with pride. I understand, he said. And I won't let them ever assume humans are weak again. The training continued into the evening, the lessons shifting to strategy and improvisation. Kael practiced setting traps with minimal materials, using the terrain to his advantage, learning to read the environment as a weapon. Each lesson reinforced the HFY principle. Humans survive not because they are the strongest, but because they can think, adapt, and act with creativity beyond expectation. By nightfall, Kael and his master sat beside a small fire, the forest around them alive with nocturnal creatures. Tonight, rest, the master said. Tomorrow, you will face your first real challenge, anticipating a slaver patrol sent to reclaim the escapee they thought was lost. Remember, Kael, humans are underestimated everywhere. Use it. Kael nodded, staring into the fire. Images of the cave massacre flashed through his mind, the drones, the screams, the flames. But now, those memories were sharpened, transformed into resolve. He would survive. He would fight back. And humans, small and seemingly weak, would be forces no alien could ignore. Hours later, Kael slept lightly, every muscle coiled and ready, mind alert. He dreamed not of the cave, but of the forest, of traps, of strategy, of outsmarting forces far stronger and faster than himself. The universe had tried to destroy him, but he had survived. Now, under the tutelage of his shinobi master, he would grow beyond survival, becoming a testament to human resilience. At dawn, the forest awoke to Kael moving silently among the trees, testing the shadows, anticipating threats. A patrol of slaver drones hovered in the distance, unaware that the child they had hunted was already several steps ahead. Using his training, Kael disappeared into the foliage, ready to demonstrate the final truth. Humans are not to be underestimated. The first strike would come not from strength, but from intellect, cunning, and precise execution. Kael Ryn was no longer just a survivor. He was a symbol, proof that humans, underestimated and oppressed, could outthink, outmaneuver, and triumph over even the most formidable adversaries.